March 23rd, 2026, 11:47 p.m. local time. The 8-hour ultimatum America had issued to Iran still had 12 hours remaining on the clock. Gulf monarchies were scrambling through back-channel diplomacy, desperately searching for an exit from the binary trap Washington and Tehran had constructed around them, and then the skies above Kuwait ignited. Not with a single missile, not with a handful of drones. With a coordinated swarm of over 60 Iranian-backed projectiles striking 7 separate U.S. and allied military installations across Kuwait and the UAE at the same time. Iran didn't wait for America's deadline to run out. They responded while the clock was still counting down, and the message was blunt. Your ultimatum is worthless, your bases are vulnerable, and your allies just watched you fail to shield them in real time. Over the next 11 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what unfolded, the specific installations that were hit, the weapons Iran's proxy forces deployed, why American defense systems couldn't contain the assault, and what this signals for the total collapse of U.S. military credibility across the Gulf. Because this wasn't simply a tactical operation. It was a strategic humiliation engineered to demonstrate that America's 5-year security guarantee over the Middle East has just been torn apart. Your support keeps this channel alive. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the critical developments the mainstream press won't cover. The assault began at precisely 11:47 p.m. Kuwait time. U.S. Central Command detected the first wave of drone signatures lifting off from southern Iraq, approximately 340 kilometers north of Kuwait's Ali Al Salem Air Base. Within 90 seconds, additional launches were confirmed from western Iraq, near the Syrian border. Then more signatures emerged from Yemen, tracked northward into UAE airspace. This was not improvised. It was a synchronized, multi-axis offensive timed to strike 7 targets within a 1-2-minute window, forcing U.S. air defenses to fragment their engagement priorities across hundreds of kilometers. The targets were carefully selected. Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait is home to the U.S. 386th Air Expeditionary Wing, processing over 13,000 personnel rotations per year. Camp Arifjan holds pre-positioned U.S. Army equipment valued at an estimated $8 billion. Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE hosts F-35 stealth fighters, KC-10 refueling tankers, and Global Hawk surveillance drones. These are not symbolic locations. They are the operational foundation of American power projection throughout the Middle East. At least 14 one-way attack drones struck fuel storage facilities at Ali Al Salem. The explosions were visible from 40 kilometers away. Black smoke columns climbed into the night sky, lit from below by secondary blasts as aviation fuel caught fire. Satellite imagery revealed at least 6 fuel tanks completely destroyed, with fires still burning 12 hours later. At Camp Arifjan, at least 9 drones targeted the ammunition depot. U.S. forces activated emergency evacuation procedures while base defense teams worked to intercept incoming threats. Personnel on the ground described relentless waves of small explosive impacts paired with automatic weapons fire from strained close-in weapon systems. Al Dhafra absorbed the most intense barrage. At least 22 projectiles, a combination of drones and short-range ballistic missiles believed to be Iranian-designed Fateh 110 variants, targeted aircraft shelters and the base operations center. The UAE's layered air defense network engaged multiple threats. Official interception rates have not been disclosed, but unconfirmed reports indicate that at least 8 projectiles broke through the defensive perimeter and connected with their intended targets. This is where the strategic picture becomes genuinely alarming. This attack occurred while America's 8-hour ultimatum to Iran was still in effect. The ultimatum that was designed to bring Iran to heel. Iran's response arrived 12 hours before the deadline even elapsed. And the answer was unambiguous. We are not standing down, we are escalating, and there is nothing you can do about it. The weapons involved are not cutting edge by any modern measure. The Shahed 136 one-way attack drone costs roughly $20,000 to produce. It carries a 40-kilogram warhead, cruises at around 180 kilometers per hour, and has a range of approximately 2,500 kilometers. It's slow, audible, and trackable. But when you launch 60 of them simultaneously across multiple axes, they overwhelm defensive systems built to neutralize high-value, expensive threats. The Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missile costs Iran around $500,000 per unit. Each Patriot interceptor fired to destroy one cost the United States approximately $4 million. That is an 8-to-1 cost imbalance before you even factor in whether the intercept was successful. Here is the arithmetic keeping Pentagon planners awake at night. U.S. Central Command confirmed that American and allied forces fired more than 40 interceptor missiles during the attack. At $4 million per Patriot interceptor, that represents $160 million expended in 12 minutes, defending installations that still sustained significant damage. Iran's proxy forces spent perhaps $2 million total on the weapons they launched. They achieved an 8-0-to-1 return on investment in forcing the U.S. to burn through defensive inventory, and they still placed warheads on target. This is not a sustainable posture. The United States cannot keep spending $160 million in interceptors every time Iran chooses to launch a $2 million drone swarm. The manufacturing capacity is not there. The budget cannot support it. And most critically, the Gulf states observing this exchange are running the same numbers and arriving at the same conclusion: American air defenses cannot protect them. Secretary of State Marco Rubio convened an emergency press conference at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, roughly 7 hours after the strikes. He condemned Iran's continued aggression and declared that the United States would respond at a time and place of its choosing. That phrasing, time and place of our choosing, is diplomatic language for we have no immediate retaliation ready. If a pre-planned strike option existed, Rubio would have announced it. The attack left Washington flat-footed, which is extraordinary given that the entire purpose of the 8-hour ultimatum was to place Iran on notice that further aggression would bring instant consequences. Iran's foreign ministry responded within 2 hours. The Islamic Republic does not negotiate under coercion. American ultimatums carry no weight. Resistance forces will continue defending their nations against foreign occupation. And here is the detail that should concern anyone paying close attention. Kuwait and the UAE, the two nations whose soil was just used as a live fire range, have issued no public condemnation of Iran. Kuwait's foreign ministry called for dialogue. The UAE announced it was monitoring the situation. Neither country named Iran. Neither country attributed the strikes to Iranian-backed groups. Neither country reaffirmed their alliance with the United States. That silence speaks volumes. Gulf monarchies have already made their calculation following Iran's ultimatum from the previous week. They are not openly aligning with America. They are hedging, stalling, and doing everything possible to avoid becoming the next explicit target in Iran's escalation cycle. This attack arrived exactly 1 week after Iran issued its own 8-hour ultimatum to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar, giving those governments 2 days to either shut down U.S. military installations on their territory or accept that their energy infrastructure would become permanent military objectives. The Gulf states neither publicly complied nor publicly refused. They went quiet and began discreetly limiting certain categories of U.S. military activity. Last night's operation was Iran demonstrating that they can hit U.S. installations, even when Gulf states try to maintain plausible deniability. The message to Kuwait and the UAE was unambiguous. You didn't force the Americans out, so we are showing you that their presence makes you a target and they cannot protect you. The message to Washington was equally direct. Your ultimatums are hollow. Your defenses are insufficient, and the nations hosting your forces are one strike away from demanding your departure. Now consider the weapons supply chain, because understanding the origin of these drones explains why the United States is structurally unable to stop this cycle. The Shahed 136 drones were not built in Iran and smuggled into Iraq last week. They were assembled inside Iraq by Iranian-backed militias using component kits supplied by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps over the past 3 years. U.S. intelligence has identified at least 7 drone manufacturing sites inside Iraq, the majority located in provinces under the control of Iranian-aligned forces. These facilities are not hidden. Washington knows their coordinates. But targeting them would mean striking inside Iraq a country that formally hosts U.S. troops and whose government has made explicitly clear that American attacks on Iraqi soil would constitute grounds for expelling American forces entirely. The drones that hit Ali al-Salem were built 340 kilometers away in a country where the U.S. maintains 2,500 troops, and American forces were legally and politically unable to destroy the production lines. That is not a tactical shortcoming. That is a strategic checkmate. The missiles launched from Yemen tell a parallel story. Houthi forces have been assembling Fateh 110 derivatives for years. American and Saudi air campaigns have repeatedly struck these facilities. But Yemen is a collapsed state with vast stretches of ungoverned terrain. Air power alone cannot eliminate missile production capacity. New sites emerge as quickly as old ones are degraded. Iran no longer needs to ship completed weapons systems. They transport the expertise, the components, and the technical personnel, then allow local proxy forces to handle final assembly. This distributed manufacturing model is functionally impossible to dismantle without a ground campaign that no government has the political will or military resources to undertake. What comes next? Last night's operation invalidated every foundational assumption underpinning U.S. strategy in the Gulf for the past 2 decades. The core assumption was that American air dominance and sophisticated missile defense networks would deter aggression and reassure partner nations that hosting U.S. bases enhanced their security. Last night proved the inverse. American installations were struck despite tens of billions of dollars in layered air defense infrastructure. Interceptors were launched. Some threats were neutralized. But enough penetrated to generate fires, casualties, and evacuations. And the nations hosting those bases responded not by standing alongside America, but by going silent. If you are Saudi Arabia observing this sequence of events, the calculation is straightforward. If Kuwait and the UAE, which host some of the most heavily fortified American installations on the planet, just absorbed an Iranian proxy attack that U.S. defenses could not fully intercept, what does that indicate about Washington's capacity to protect Saudi oil infrastructure? The answer requires no interpretation. America cannot protect it. Not against sustained swarm operations combining cheap drones with mass-produced missiles. The interceptor math is broken. The production pipelines cannot keep pace. And the geographic scale of Saudi Arabia's energy infrastructure makes comprehensive coverage a physical impossibility. Iran just exposed the emptiness of America's position. The 4 8-hour ultimatum Washington delivered was meant to project strength. Instead, Iran escalated before the deadline expired, struck 7 installations simultaneously, and laid bare the structural weakness at the heart of American regional strategy. The United States can project forces into the theater, but it cannot defend them against attacks that cost a fraction of what it takes to neutralize them. Share this with anyone who still believes America's Gulf presence is viable. Last night, 60 Iranian-backed projectiles struck 7 installations across 2 countries. American defenses spent $160 million in interceptors and still took direct hits. Kuwait and the UAE refused to even name Iran as the aggressor. Saudi Arabia is watching and running the numbers. And the 4 8-hour ultimatum that was supposed to bring Iran into line just became the punchline to an extraordinarily costly miscalculation. The question is no longer whether America's Gulf strategy survives this moment. It is how long it takes Washington to acknowledge what everyone else already understands. Thanks for watching. Leave your thoughts below. Do you believe the U.S. can maintain its position in the Gulf, or does last night mark the opening chapter of a full strategic withdrawal? Let me know, and make sure you're subscribed for ongoing coverage.